This is BBC One. Now at 6 o'clock, the news with Sophie Raworth.
At 6, the man who presented this programme for 20 years, George Alagiah, has died. He was 67. George first joined the BBC more than 30 years ago, working as a foreign correspondent before becoming one of the most loved and respected faces on BBC News. We launched the new 6 o'clock news together back in 2003. He went on to become this programme's longest-serving presenter. The BBC's Director General has called him one of the best and bravest journalists of his generation. We will be looking back at his life. Also on the programme, wildfires are still burning out of control on the Greek island of Rhodes as hundreds of British holidaymakers are flown home. Easing England's planning rules, the government says it wants to create more homes in cities. And the UK's last open coal mine, why campaigners are demanding that it shut now.
Also this hour, Londoners share their experience of trying to leave Greece due to wildfires, and the impact of Wandsworth Bridge closing for 10 weeks for repair.
Good evening. George Alagiah died this morning at the age of 67. He was at home, surrounded by all his family. He was diagnosed with stage 4 bowel cancer in April 2014. His chances of living more than 5 years didn't look good, but he defied all the statistics. George kept working here in the newsroom until September last year. He loved it. It kept him going. He was very proud to do this job. He was a brilliant, award-winning journalist, a great team player, one of the most respected people here, and he had an extraordinary career. But above all, he was a very fine human being, as his friend and colleague Allan Little will now tell you.
3, 2, 1, go take.
At 6 o'clock, the ground war on Iraq has begun.
Millions knew him as the face of the 6 o'clock news.
Good evening and welcome to the 6 o'clock news.
And for his calm, unflappable authority.
Good evening and welcome to the BBC's News at 6.
He was born in Sri Lanka in 1955 to Christian Tamil parents. As a child, the family moved to Ghana.
This is the road.
And he was swept up in the early optimism of a young nation newly independent of British colonial rule.
We knew that Africa was going to be united and that Ghana and this country was going to be at the centre of it. I mean, I think that was a kind of dream.
At 11, he was a migrant again, this time to England, where his parents enrolled him in a Portsmouth boarding school. Here, though there was some racism, he learned to adapt to a new culture and to thrive.
Born in Sri Lanka.
At Durham University, he met his wife, Frances.
Anything like that. I think when we got married, we were aware of a sort of meeting of cultures. You can see that in the wedding photos. We've got 2 sons, Adam and Matthew.
In a turbulent and often dangerous working life, she and their 2 boys were the still and unwavering centre of his existence, his solid ground.
And welcome to the Rainbow Nation. For just over a year now, South Africa has been my base as the BBC's Africa correspondent.
I knew George as a foreign correspondent. We worked together in Africa, the continent whose fate ran through his life like a thread through cloth.
So this is where your house, eh? Oh, it's nice. It's nice.
I thought of him as a kind of mentor. I was inspired by his example. He was brave, calm and kind.
Okay, you get the water from here and do that.
I admired his gift for reaching into the hearts of those caught up in war or natural disaster, winning their trust even at the worst moments of their lives. In a refugee camp in eastern Zaire, hundreds were dying every day of preventable illness.
I asked her what she wanted from life. A job, she said, so I can look after little Petty.
In Somalia, he met a woman whose 10-year-old daughter had just died. His own children were about the same age.
It seemed wrong to be there at what should have been a moment of private grief. She said it was all right if it might help to save her other daughter.
I haven't the heart to count, and it doesn't really matter.
There were moments when he crossed the line between merely witnessing and actively intervening in the pain of others.
We took those we could manage to the French military hospital. At times like this, it's impossible not to cross the line that divides us, the observers, and those we observe.
The Rwandese translator we worked with then, Seth Ngarambe, told us his Tutsi wife had been murdered by Hutu extremists. But he was later accused of complicity in her murder and jailed. George wanted to know the truth, however painful, and went to find him in prison. The nature of their reunion, the power of it, says something profound about the George we knew and his extraordinary talent.
You're looking well, looking better than I thought.
Yes.
Eh? Come, Seth, can we go and talk somewhere?
Diamond, it's wonderful.
He even charmed men at the heart of Sierra Leone's normally secretive diamond trading business.
Look, this is the biggest you've seen all day.
Yeah.
The world of the so-called blood diamond.
This is something to write home about.
No, this is about $2,000, $2,500.
So you're in the clear.
In Ghana, he went back to his old school.
Somewhere in here is me. Go on. Yes. Well done.
He would later say that he was destined to spend his adult life in Africa dispelling the dream he had nurtured so carefully as a child. He was in Johannesburg in the Mandela years, a time of bright promise. Mandela, in his 70s, was about to remarry.
And now, sir, the future, you're a man in love?
It is a wonderful moment for me, as anybody else, to be in love.
When he returned to the UK, he brought to the studio a wealth of wisdom and experience gathered over years on the road. Though in the seconds before his first 6 o'clock news, there was some trepidation.
At 6 o'clock, these are tonight's top stories.
He was diagnosed with cancer in 2014. After a grueling round of treatment and multiple operations, he couldn't wait to be back in the tumult of the newsroom. He was deeply moved by messages of support and affection sent in by countless viewers he'd never meet. And on his first day back, made this small concession.
And I just want to say it's good to be back with you. That's all.
Off-screen, George was funny, clever, a generous and confiding friend, and full of energetic hope. There was something infectious about his optimism. You always walked away from time with George feeling better about the human race and the world in general.
And that's the BBC's News at 6.
The migrant boy whose family left Sri Lanka with nothing found his home in a changing Britain, and he took this country to his heart.
It's goodbye. The news continues, though, here on BBC One.
I watched George for years up close and thought this of him, that people wanted to tell him their story because in his journalism they saw the outstretched hand of a shared humanity and of solidarity.
Well, Allan joins us live now from his home in Edinburgh. And Allan, you did get to know him very well, didn't you, during those years that you worked alongside him in South Africa?
Yeah, and that outstretched hand that I've referred to there, the quality that distinguished him as a reporter is the same as the quality that distinguished him as a really fine human being, and that was empathy. He had this great ability to put himself in the situation of others. And I watched him again and again in multiple situations, winning the trust of people who were living through the worst moments of their lives. There was a word from the Nguni languages of Southern Africa that we used quite a lot back then in the Mandela years. It's Ubuntu. There's no direct English translation, but it carries the conviction that all human beings are bound together in some kind of shared responsibility for each other. Bishop Tutu used to define it as, I can never be rich if you are poor. I can never be fully free if you are enslaved. And I think that the values that cohere around that word were George's lodestar. And I was a little in awe of him when I started working with him. He was already an established name, and I was trying to find my feet as a correspondent. And I came to look up to him almost like an older brother, somebody whose success I could enjoy without envy. And I hoped some of the values that he embodied and lived would rub off on me.
What really struck me about George deeply was just how he dealt with his cancer, because he had more than, 100 rounds of chemo. He said he'd lost count. He had 5 major operations at least, but somehow he remained really positive and calm.
There was that energetic hope about him, that optimism, and he was determined to bring that, as you say, to his cancer diagnosis. He once said to me, sitting in the garden of his house in North London, he said, I'm not afraid to die. I haven't got time for that. I've decided to leave all the worrying to my doctors and get on with my life. The one thing he said he found unbearably painful was the idea of his wife Fran being left on her own. And there was always that in George, others before self, especially Francis and the two boys, who were his bedrock, really. But yes, he brought that positivity to his cancer, and I went to see him 2 weeks ago today when he was still in hospital, and he said, you know, Allan, if you haven't told the people you love that you love them, don't wait, just tell them. Because, you know, what he said was that there is a positive side to cancer. He said, is it wrong to think there's a positive side to cancer? Because I've had time that you don't get with the brutality of a car crash, say, to think about my life, reflect on it, make sense of it, and say to the people that I love the things I want them to hear. And it was absolutely typical of George.
He taught us all a lot about living. Allan Little, thank you very much. And we will have a special tribute to George at the end of this programme. The rest of the news now, and wildfires are still burning out of control on the Greek island of Rhodes. More rescue flights have been laid on to bring home thousands of Britons who had to flee from the fires. 2 other Greek islands, Corfu and Evia, have also ordered evacuations. Officials in Corfu say they suspect arson, but now have the fires under control. The fires in Rhodes are thought to have affected 10 to 20% of the island. From Lindos, here's our correspondent, Jenny Hill.
It seems like a miracle no one was hurt. Fire swept through this resort, not much left behind. Those were once water skis. So much of this island still looks, well, idyllic. And then you take a few steps and you come across a scene, well, like this. It's still smouldering. That, of course, was someone's livelihood completely destroyed. This is where there were sunbeds just a few days ago. It wasn't just tourists who scrambled to safety.
I was crying. It was making me feel terrible.
Adisa and her family, who all work in the hotels here, had to get out too. When we met them, they'd only just learned their house had survived the fire.
For the tourists, it was a really terrified and bad experience. But for us, I think it's worse because we live here, everything is burned.
Not everything. This hotel, one of the most luxurious in Lindos, escaped damage. But the guests are gone and much of the surrounding countryside is destroyed.
If you have seen the scenery around, it's like a biblical catastrophe. The hotel is a hotel, you will rebuild it, you will repaint it, but the nature outside is the most important thing that we need to check what we're gonna do, because all this is a result of the environmental crisis that we are facing.
And all day, despite every effort, the fires have raged on. Strong winds fanning the flames. It's far too soon to properly assess the damage done here. But on the nearby beach, a business owner had come to take a look.
We lost the business. We have a good health, and we are hope to fix it again.
It's a sign of just how quickly things change. The wind's very strong now, and we've been told we need to get out because the fire may be coming towards us. It seems unstoppable. Firefighters now battling to save more villages from the flames. All those who've fled can do is watch and hope. You know, it feels rather incongruous standing here. You've got tourists having fun behind me here on the beach. That, of course, is what the Greek authorities want to encourage. But at the same time, really not so far away, you've got firefighters battling desperately to bring those wildfires under control. Part of the problem here is the wind. Now, we're standing in a fairly sheltered spot. You might be able to see, though, it is extremely windy here, and that's really fanning those flames. It's also very hot across Greece. The heatwave conditions are expected to continue well into the middle of the week, and today the Greek Prime Minister warned that another 3 difficult days lie ahead for this country. Greece, he said, was at war with the wildfires.
Jenny, thank you. So what should you do if you have a holiday or flights booked to Rhodes in the coming days or weeks? Our transport correspondent, Katie Austin, is with me now. Katie.
Well, Sophie, it has already been a very stressful experience for many holidaymakers. These arriving back today were furious.
We've had to pay to come home, so I want that money refunded and I want an explanation. I've had no texts, nothing from them. Where are they? There's no EasyJet person here.
We were just moved from our resort to another resort with no kind of organisation in terms of why we were going there, who was going to meet us there, no reps there to guide us, nothing.
The only help that we have had through this whole thing has been from Greek people. We've had no help from any British holiday companies or any British authorities. We've had no help whatsoever.
And there's been some uncertainty for people who were due to travel soon. This afternoon, EasyJet announced it has now cancelled package holidays to affected resorts in Rhodes up to and including Saturday. TUI has done similar. It won't run any more flights to Rhodes up to and including Friday. And it's cancelled outbound flights for customers who were meant to be staying in affected hotels until Sunday. They can get refunds. Jet2 had already cancelled holiday departures until the end of Sunday. Now today, more additional flights have been put on to help get people home. So what if you have a flight booked? Well, remember, there are still many parts of Rhodes that are still unaffected by fires, and there's nothing to stop airlines continuing to fly to the island nor to Corfu. Ryanair is carrying on as normal. EasyJet is also still flying out, but it is letting people change bookings over the rest of the week. And British Airways is letting customers due to visit Rhodes or Corfu in the next week postpone. If you can still travel but no longer want to, well, there's no automatic right to a refund.
The best thing to do is to get in touch with your tour operator and appreciate that may be difficult. They are likely to be very busy at the moment, and see what your options are. In most cases, there will be some options there to rebook or claim a refund. If not, if you can't do that, you're not booked with a package, then look to travel insurance, contact your provider if you have taken it out and see what they might be able to do for you.
The UK government still isn't advising against travel to Greece. It is saying if you're planning to travel to areas which are affected by wildfires, you should check with your travel operator or hotel before you set off. This is still a very fast-moving situation, Sophie.
Katie, thank you. So how long will this heatwave in southern Europe last? Are there any signs of the temperatures easing soon? Here's Sarah Keith Lucas.
I think we've seen the peak of the heat wave today. It's been the hottest day of the year so far in Europe, with temperatures of 48 in Sardinia. But let's look at the next few days. So this is the temperature anomaly, how temperatures vary from what we'd expect this time of year. The blue colours showing cooler than average areas such as the UK, the orange and reds showing hotter than average. Now, we've had the heat today across southern Italy, Sardinia, Sicily too, but as we fast forward for the next few days, just watch the orange and red colours slipping their way eastwards. So the heat, by the time we get to Wednesday, still sitting across Greece, could again be the high 40s. By the time we get to Thursday, though, the blue colours, the colder air spills right through central parts of the continent. So yes, some respite on the way later on in the week after another few hot days. But according to the World Meteorological Organization, temperatures in Europe are warming at a faster rate than any continent in the world. In fact, we've already seen a temperature rise of 2.3 Celsius compared to pre-industrial times. That's about twice as fast as the global average. So yes, climate change certainly playing a role, but also high temperatures in the sea as well. Temperatures, in fact, 5 degrees above average across parts of the Mediterranean, and those warmer seas just add extra fuel to those higher air temperatures.
Thank you. The time is coming up to 6:20. Our top story this evening. George Alagiah, our friend and colleague, has died at the age of 67. We have a special tribute coming up. George, in his own words.
You know, I wish I hadn't had cancer, obviously, but I have cancer, and I'm glad of the things I've learned about myself and about my community, my friends and my family as a result.
And at 6:30, Hertfordshire becomes the latest county bordering London to refuse ULEZ warning signs and cameras. Plus, we meet Eva. Could she be London's youngest eco-warrior?
The government has pledged to relax planning rules in England to create more homes in cities across the country. The Housing Secretary, Michael Gove, said he would make it easier to convert empty retail premises and betting shops into flats and houses. Labour says the plans aren't ambitious enough. Our political correspondent Jonathan Blake has more.
Almost everyone agrees more new homes are needed, but it's harder to find a consensus on where and how to build them.
Yeah, park up, and I saw they put a village hall in.
The Prime Minister popped in to see Jennifer in the West Midlands this morning. She moved into her new home 3 weeks ago. He restated the government's commitments and said building in cities was crucial to boosting housing supply.
It's important that we do that in the right way, and that means building houses in the right places with the support of local communities, not concreting over the countryside. So we're making it easier for people to expand homes upwards and outwards. We're making it easier to build on brownfield sites with more investment, and we're investing in the planning system.
Sobia Shabir is 38 and living with her parents, hoping one day to rent or even own her own place.
I am looking to buy a property, but unfortunately there's not much available. I would love to kind of purchase within Birmingham, but like I said, it's quite difficult at the moment because a lot of you get quite a lot of properties which you're able to rent, but it's not affordable.
Ministers want to make it easier to convert empty shops into flats and houses. They're reviewing rules on home extensions and conversions and providing funding to help clear a backlog of planned projects. In 2019, the Conservatives pledged to build at least 1 million more homes in England over the course of this Parliament, which the Prime Minister recommitted to today. But they also set a target of 300,000 homes per year by the mid-2020s. The latest figures show there were 232,820 new homes in the year to March 2022, some way off the government's aim. And they're facing opposition from their own backbenchers. Today, one vowed to fight plans for Cambridge he described as nonsense.
Cambridge already has just about the highest rate of house building in the country, and it's due to accelerate under local plans, another 50,000 houses over the next 20 years. So we're definitely doing our part. We do need more housing, but it needs to be spread across the country.
Labour, who've said they'll relax some rules around building on the Greenbelt, dismissed the government's plans.
Mortgages have gone through the roof. House building is falling off a cliff. We don't need more recycled press releases and broken promises. We need serious action to get Britain building.
Housing is sure to be a big issue at the next general election. The problem all the main parties face is showing enough ambition to build the new homes that are needed while keeping their supporters happy in towns, cities and the countryside. The Conservatives are looking squarely at cities to solve what many call a housing crisis. Finding solutions is fraught with political difficulty. Jonathan Blake, BBC News.
Israel's parliament has approved a controversial new law to reform the justice system, despite some of the biggest demonstrations in the country's history. Furious protesters have called it an attack on democracy and are continuing to throng the streets of Jerusalem hours after compromise talks broke down. The new law will limit the power of the Supreme Court to challenge the government. Israel's Justice Minister said it will ensure the will of voters is respected. The BBC has apologised to the former UKIP leader Nigel Farage over a report about the reason why his account at the private bank Coutts was closed. Our media editor Katie Razzle can tell us more. Katie.
Sophie, the head of NatWest, which owns Coutts Bank, has already apologised to Mr Farage. Now the CEO of BBC News has written to him to say sorry, and the journalist behind the story has tweeted his apology. Because earlier this month, the BBC reported that the private bank had closed the former UKIP leader's bank account for commercial reasons. He had always said it had been a political decision. And after the BBC's report, Mr Farage was provided with highly critical internal Coutts documents, which showed the bank considered he held xenophobic, chauvinistic and racist views. Now, the BBC's business editor Simon Jack tweeted today that the information he based his story on had been from a trusted and senior source, but he added it turned out to be incomplete and inaccurate. Tonight, Mr Farage, speaking to the BBC, said he accepted the apologies with good grace, but that NatWest was at fault and he still wants answers from the bank.
Katie, thank you. The former England footballer Trevor Francis has died. He was 69. His family say he had a heart attack in Spain. Trevor Francis became Britain's first £1 million footballer when he joined Nottingham Forest on completing a transfer from Birmingham City in 1979. He went on to win 2 European Cups there. The UK's last open-cast coal mine was supposed to close in September last year when planning permission for the site expired, but it is still operating. Inspectors to the site have also now found the company was breaking its licence by mining outside of its permitted area. Campaigners are demanding the immediate closure of the site at Merthyr Tydfil in South Wales. Our Wales correspondent Hal Griffith reports.
The largest and last of its kind. The Fors-Avran mine above Merthyr Tydfil produces 2/3 of the UK's coal. But there's a problem. It should have shut 10 months ago.
So as we look at it now, we can see lorries, there's activity there now.
Yeah. After campaigning against the mine for 2 decades, in September last year, Chris and Alison thought their time living in its shadow would end when planning permission ran out. But the work carried on.
Felt sick, didn't we?
Oh, it's like a punch to the stomach, to be honest with you. We'd been looking forward to that. Obviously, as campaigners as well, we knew the dates. We were prepared for it. You had your bottle of champagne.
Champagne ready, yeah. Yeah.
But the celebrations are still on ice. Although the company failed to extend permission, it still produced at least 200,000 tonnes of coal since September, making it the UK's largest producer.
Trucks laden with coal keep on coming from the mine. The train down there is slowly being filled up, ready to take it to market. That's despite the fact that inspectors have now found the company has been mining outside its licensed area. The coal authority told it to stop, but it carried on. The council served an enforcement notice on the operator last month. It's been appealed, sending the decision to the Welsh Government, which could take another year.
We're in the middle of a climate change crisis. The Welsh Government has to put a stop to this now. It has to be done now, and it shouldn't be sort of months and months and months down the line. No, stop faffing around and get on with the job of stopping that mine.
We asked the company and the Welsh Government to respond. Both said they couldn't comment. With 130 jobs at stake, closure would signal further decline in an industry that shaped Wales. Some believe coal will always be an option.
It's not impossible to imagine that in the future, in the event of some global energy crisis, people turn back to the past and start digging up and using the coal that's under our feet.
For now, the campaigners say they're left frustrated, wondering what it will take to finally shut Britain's biggest mine. Howell Griffith, BBC News, Merthyr Tydfil.
Time now for a look at the weather. Here's Sarah Keith-Lucas.
Sophie, well, the weather has been drying out today, certainly compared to what we saw through the course of the weekend. This was the picture in Preston a little bit earlier on. And in fact, in Preston, we had 111 millimetres of rain through the weekend. And that's about 1.5 times the amount we'd expect through the whole month of July. So it's been really wet, drying out. But I don't think you'll be too surprised to hear that there is a bit more rain in the forecast over the next few days. It won't be too persistent tomorrow. Another day of sunny spells and scattered showers, a bit like some of us have seen today. In fact, if we take a look at the satellite and the radar from the past few hours, still some cloud and rain lingering in the far south, and we've also got some rain now just pushing in to the northwest of Scotland. Over the next few hours, that area of cloud and rain will drift its way further south, by the end of the night sitting down close to the central belt. But elsewhere, most of the showers fade away. There will be the odd one for parts of Wales, perhaps the southwest of England, but a fairly fresh night, so temperatures between about 8 to 12 degrees with those clear spells. Bit of sunshine to start the day tomorrow for many of us. We have got the cloud and rain across parts of central Scotland, which will just drift its way south, and there'll be more showers cropping up, and they'll be particularly heavy for parts of eastern England and eastern Scotland, where there could be some thunderstorms mixed in, but fewer showers further south and west, but you could catch 1 or 2 almost anywhere. 15 to about 21 degrees for most of us. And then after this ridge of high pressure just holds on for a time, the next area of low pressure moves in during Wednesday. So Wednesday, again, starting off dry, and actually many northern and eastern areas will stay dry for a good part of the day, but the next area of rain sweeps in from the west. The winds will pick up as well, and temperatures still a little below par, around about 14 to 21 degrees. So it is looking fairly unsettled for the next week or so. Yes, some showers in the forecast, but there'll be a little bit of sunshine around too. Sophie.
Sarah, thank you. Now we're going to end the programme tonight with a special tribute to George. 20 years ago, George and I launched the new 6 o'clock news together back in January 2003. He was a foreign correspondent at heart. That was his passion. But he felt enormously proud and privileged to be presenting the BBC's evening news. And he loved it. He loved being in the newsroom, being part of the team. And he made a good cup of tea as well. We all adored him. He felt a real connection with the audience too. After he was diagnosed with cancer just over 9 years ago, he received thousands of letters and messages from people who wrote to him as if they knew each other, strangers who spoke to him as a friend. He was really touched by your support. George was a man of great values, an indomitable spirit, a big smile, a velvety laugh, a great friend. I saw him just a few weeks ago. He told me he had hoped to come back to work one last time to say thank you and goodbye right here, live on air in the studio. He didn't get the chance, so we have done it for him. I'll leave you now with George Alagiah in his own words.
My life is, for what it's worth, is divided into pre-cancer and post-cancer. You know, the weird thing about a bowel cancer journey is you don't really know the beginning and you don't really know the end. So I know the day I was diagnosed with bowel cancer, but I don't know when it started, because I was at the top of my game. I was having a fantastic time at work, at home, and suddenly you hear those words, "I'm sorry to have to tell you, Mr. Alagiah, you've got bowel cancer." At first, when you're told, you don't know how to kind of respond, and it took me a while to understand what I needed to do. For me, I had to get to a place of contentment, and the only way I knew how to do that was literally to look back at my life. Actually, when I look back, I looked at my journey, where it all started, looked at the family I had, the opportunities my family had, and the great good fortune to bump into Fran, who's now been my wife and lover for all these years. The kids that we brought up, it didn't feel like a failure. You know, I wish I hadn't had cancer, obviously, but I have cancer, and I'm glad of the things I've learned about myself and about my community, my friends and my family as a result. I have got to a place is to see life as a gift, and rather than kind of worrying about when it's going to end and how it's going to end, I've got to a place where I can see it for the gift it is. I feel that gift keenly every morning.
Poignant words from a wise and wonderful man. Welcome to BBC London, coming up tonight.